with Mordechai Shapiro's song is called Unity. Actually, an amazing intro into our next guest who, like any responsible Jewish leader or person who has become a person of note in our community, is always calling for unity and praying that, in fact, we will be as unified as possible. Before that, you heard the Yaakov Shweki selection, Kulanu Yiladim Shalcha. JM in the AM on a Wednesday morning broadcast. Rabbi Leo Dee is with us. After the devastating loss of his wife and two daughters in a terror attack in April of 2023, Rabbi Leo Dee discovered that the path to healing involves building a new inner world where resilience and hope can grow alongside positive memories. He has written the 7 Facets of Healing. It offers a roadmap for rebuilding life after devastating loss through 7 interconnected facets. And, of course, we'll talk about those interconnected facets. And I do remind everybody that since this horrific episode that occurred to the Dee family back in April of 2023, Rabbi Dee has remarried and continues to, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but continues to move forward, so to speak, in this personal and very open journey. Rabbi Leo Dee, a pleasure to welcome you back to JM in the AM.
Nachum, it's a pleasure to be back here again. Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. You know, it's funny, you and I mentioned in the intro that you discovered that the path to healing involves building a new inner world. How long does it take to build that new inner world?
It's interesting. People say to me, time heals or time doesn't heal, and I still have a broken heart, or I can fix it. All these different things. I think what I've discovered is that it's around triggers. When a tragedy happens, God forbid, everything is a trigger for you. Your friends are a trigger, your family's a trigger, anything you see or you do or you hear, that immediately is a trigger, and it just puts you back into that moment of pain. And I think what happens is that over time, those triggers spread out a little bit more, and you start beginning to realize what's triggering you, and that you begin to realize what's triggering you, and then you're able to take each trigger and deal with it individually, and work on it in order to build. To build your life by fixing each trigger.
Are there positive triggers? Are there things that happen the same way we would look at a trigger as you just described? Are there things that happen that trigger comfort or trigger, more resilience?
No, I don't think so. I think that what happens is you get pain from the trigger. And if you understand what's causing it, you can begin to fix that trigger. So it's not that you heal in the sense that, God forbid, you forget your loved one. It's just that all the moments that cause pain, when you think about them, can be transformed into joy. So I can now, more and more, I can remember Lucy, Maya, and Rena with a smile, and I don't have to burst into tears. And I think that's the trick. It's about figuring out what's triggering you, what's causing you pain, and then thinking, why is it causing me pain? And then the moment you're able to understand it, it almost goes away immediately. It ceases to be a trigger anymore.
Wow. The book is called The 7 Facets of Healing, a practical guide to recovery by Rabbi Leo Dee, who's with us live via telephone. Now, you describe the healing power through the following facets. And the list goes as follows: family, friends, fitness, faith, function, finances, and fun. Are these 7 facets in a specific order for a reason? Does the recovery start with family and you can't move on to the others until that has kicked in, so to speak?
I think that they're all equal, and I don't think there necessarily is an order, but you're right. I think family often is the first thing that one can can use it, as a healing. I mean, people say to me, how can you ever recover from such a tragic loss? And I think it's interesting, if you think about it, God forbid somebody loses someone very, very close to them in the family that they love with all their heart, and most of us would think, we'll never recover from that because that person is so important to me and I spend all my time with them and I love them so much. But if you actually think about it rationally, which is not something that we tend to do, A, before something happens, and B, when it happens. But if you think about it rationally, if you harbor that much love for one or two or three members of your own family, right, that you feel that you could be, it's not fixable, then you probably also have that amount of love for other members of your family, right? For whom staying positive afterwards and keeping that relationship going and looking after them and caring about them can pull you through. So precisely the thing which you think is going to make you unable to cope in that situation is precisely the same power of family, which is what's going to keep you going, God forbid, if something happens afterwards.
Wow. Many of these, I think, are relatively easy, or I should say, are understandable, to the casual observer, to those listening right now. I think all of us understand how family and friends and even fitness and faith play a role, especially these days when, fitness can be, a piece to a lot of, discipline and a lot of, overcoming resilience. But tell me about finances and fun. How do those two work into being such important facets that they made the top 7 of Rabbi Leo Dee's list?
Right. I think it's interesting. One of the things which I'm hoping to move more and more into in the next couple of years is PTSD, helping people with PTSD, particularly in Israel, where that's quite a trend. And one of the things that I think we need to do more is a holistic approach to healing. And, we go in and we give them a nice break. They fly them over to Teaneck for a holiday, which is very important. And we give them treatments. And that deals with a bit of the fitness side of life and so forth. But it's 1 out of 7. The people who have suffered trauma in the army or through terror attacks or any type of trauma, often it affects their jobs, and one of the biggest worries on their head is how they're going to get food on the plate for their family. Right. And I think when we deal with trauma, we tend to forget that. We look at the person and say, well, maybe they need a bit of calm, maybe they need some people to come and visit them and friends and family. But actually, it could be that for many people, the concern about how their job and their career is going and how they're going to pay, the mortgage is weighing on them, and that's one of the things that's holding them back from healing. So I think it's holistically, it's a critical part of the puzzle.
Oh,
as far as fun is concerned, yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so as fun is concerned, this was like a strange revelation to me. I've said this story a number of times, but I think it's worth repeating that the third day of the Shiva, a girl came to the Shiva apparently to speak to me. She was from a midrash up in the north of Israel. She slept a couple of hours on a bus to get to us. And we had 10,000 people at the Shiva, Baruch Hashem, and so she didn't get anywhere near me. She ended up chatting to my sister, and she wanted some spiritual advice about some problem in her life. I don't think I was in the state to give it to her at the time anyway. But my sister, my sister, bless her, is a PhD psychologist. So she's aware of life and so forth, but she's not really into sort of spiritual. Not such a spiritual person. And after everyone had left at about 10 o'clock at night, my sister said to me that this girl had come and she tried to give us some advice, but she said it felt like somebody had come to visit the Pope and ended up speaking to his cleaning lady. And so I burst into hysterics. I burst into hysterics at this vision that she presented, and then I immediately felt guilty because here I am on the third night of my Shiva for my wife and my 2 daughters, and it's the saddest time in my life. I mean, I can't, and I'm sure people can hardly imagine a more traumatic and tragic time. And I was in hysterical laughter, and I'm thinking to myself, how can it be that I'm terribly, deeply sad, and I'm laughing? And it took a while, but I realized that actually there's no contradiction because, mitzvah gadol liyot b'simcha tamid. It is a mitzvah to be always in simcha. It's also a mitzvah to be sad, at a funeral and Tisha B'Av and other times. There's no contradiction. It can't be that the rabbi said you have to be happy always, and at the same time you have to be sad. So it turns out that actually happiness, the simcha, also kef, fun, is a tremendously important aspect of healing. And one of the things, Nachum, which I say in this book, is there are 30 chapters based in the structure of these 7 different sort of facets of healing. Right. But each one starts with an assumption and a reality. In other words, this chapter on happiness would start saying the assumption is you can't be happy if you're mourning and you suffer a tragedy. The reality, actually, happiness and laughter is healthy for you. And I remember that, after the tragedy, I spoke to many, many groups. And at the end of the talk, often they'd want a group photograph with me. And I consciously remembered, I said, how can I smile when I've been through such a tragedy? Maybe I'll never smile ever again. Although obviously I did smile during that year, but I didn't want to smile in these photographs. Later on, I remembered something which I knew from before, which is that not only do we smile when we're happy, but actually smiling makes you happy. So if if your listeners want to try this, putting on a fixed smile on your face, for 10 seconds in the morning, like a really wide smile, at the end of 10 seconds, I guarantee they'll feel a bit happier. Yes. And so, our natural instinct, which is to look sad when we are suffering, is actually working against us actually healing. Because if we were to look happy, we would actually be on a path to healing. So this I discovered in everything. I mean, the 30 chapters, every single one. The information is actually the opposite to what you might think. And I think the reason is because our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, our animalistic sort of nature, does not actually want to heal. There is some sort of animalistic pleasure in being miserable and lying in bed and not having to get up to daven and not having to get up to work and not having to get up to speak to people and to justify your existence and to talk. And so that, there are many, many pressures on us internally in our bodies and our minds, keeping us away from healing. And the moment that you stop listening to the natural instinct after trauma and actually start doing the right thing, you're already on the path to healing.
It's what drove me to write this book. It's the old happiness is a choice. If one wants to, It
is, but it's even worse than that because after trauma, all your instincts are the opposite.
Right.
It's hard to explain, but you commit yourself to do all the wrong things.
Wow. Rabbi Leo Dee is with us. By the way, you mentioned PTSD, and we know that in the aftermath of this terrible war, we know what so many in Israel, the soldiers and those who are injured especially, are going through, and those who are going back to their families, is a difficult adjustment. And no matter how many stories you hear, it's just multiplied by God knows how many more in terms of those in Israel trying to get back into regular family life and society. These guidelines, because remember, you're writing a book about recovering from the trauma of these terrible and devastating losses. These guidelines, these 7 facets, do you feel that someone who's unfortunately in a situation like that of PTSD could be very helpful?
Yeah, I think that I imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that people who are suffering trauma, having been on the battlefield and seen terrible things happen, or people who have lost other members of family, even those bereavement of a parent or whatever, we're all suffering trauma from many different things, and I think that these rules apply generally across the board. It may, to a certain extent, they apply even in times of challenge in our lives. And I speak to a lot of youth in my travels. I'm in Washington, as you know, at the moment. We're speaking to high schools and universities. Then we're going to Canada in the next couple of weeks. And these rules apply. For example, the concept, the family concept of thinking about what you do have, and not what you don't have.
Right.
I think that concept of gratitude is something that pulls all of us out of difficult times, right? Because naturally, we as human beings, our evil inclination does doom scrolling. As you know, we look through all the bad news, right. And it's only radio stations like your own that focus more on the good news. And that's really important because someone who's suffering trauma or tragedy or crisis or challenge, we have to refocus. That's where the choice comes in. We can think about the bad, or we can think about the good.
No question. I appreciate the recognition of what we do here. I appreciate that very much. The book is available on Amazon. Pretty easy. Rabbi Leo Dee, D-E-E. The book is entitled The Seven Facets of Healing. Again, The Seven Facets of Healing. You could search for it on Amazon and get it almost immediately, as things tend to go these days. Okay, Rabbi Dee, you know that there are members of our audience who would be very upset if I didn't bring this up. And therefore, I certainly will take the opportunity to ask you the journey to go back into the social scene, the journey that you embarked on that ended up, Baruch Hashem, in you finding a new mate and marrying your second wife. How does someone, even with the benefits of the facets of healing in their pocket, how does someone find the resilience and the encouragement to take that journey and to get to where you are?
Thank you for asking that. So one of the chapters I talk about, and I've spoken, I think maybe even on this channel in the past, about my Shabbat alone. About a year after the tragedy, I found myself by myself for Shabbat. My 3 kids were all out that particular Shabbat. It was the first time it had happened since the tragedy. I invited out for 2 meals, but seriously shit, I came home to an empty house, and I remember crying for half an hour. And I was irreconcilable, and I thought to myself at the end of it, why are you crying? And even though, it might seem obvious to some of the listeners after what happened, I had been home to an empty house during the week on multiple occasions, and I hadn't burst into tears like that. And I realized that it was being by myself on Shabbat, the first time in 30 years. And the moment I realized this, and this is really the principle behind this whole book, the moment you realize what's causing the pain, what the trigger is, the pain can go away. And literally, the moment I realized what the pain was, I asked myself the question, what can I do? I said, I need to get remarried. That was the aha moment. And the moment I thought of that, the pain disappeared.
Wow.
And, it seems that was a proof to me that was what was causing it. So I started on a journey that was about a year and a half ago. And people had already started calling me and offering me shidduchim and so forth. But at that point, I started sort of in earnest saying yes. And it was a journey. And the strange thing is, I have to say, people after bereavement of a spouse, you have to be careful not to jump in too quickly, because I realize now that the ladies that I found more interesting at the beginning were totally inappropriate for me, and it took me. It was only because I Baruch Hashem, met many ladies. I went out with about 30 women in a period of about a year. That I realized what I was looking for. So I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of taking the first person that you like, but it may not be the right type. And funnily enough, at the beginning, a lot of the women I dated turned out were dating me because they wanted advice on dealing with trauma. Wow. And I didn't mind. I was talking a lot about this at the time anyway. So for me, it was quite fun. Yeah, it was quite easy and fun to talk about. But when I met Eliza, I recall that we went out, we spoke, the first date was 3 hours, and she didn't once ask me about trauma. We talked about everything and just like normal topics, and I realized that actually this was like a healthy relationship, and this is not building it based on a particular time, but she saw me as a full person, and hopefully I saw her as a full person, and that was what made it very special.
And when you're standing under the chuppah with Aliza, is your mind racing in a million different directions, or you have tremendous peace and tremendous focus on that moment?
So it was very interesting. Aliza, has a strong background in hadracha. She actually ran Bnei Akiva in North America. She was one of the senior people in the team 20 years ago, and she's always been involved in that. She's now a manager in a high-tech company, but effectively, she's just a grown-up madracha. So she
does she appreciate when you remind her about that?
Yeah, I think so. But I think so. She determined quite rightly that the chuppah should be a tekes ma'ava. So just like we have between Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut, right. We have like from the sad to the happy. She determined that's what we should do. So we put the breaking of the glass right at the beginning. So after we did the ketubah, and in fact, after I handed her, I put the ring on and we did the ketubah, before the reading of the ketubah, we actually squeezed in the breaking of the glass, and Tali and Karen, my daughters, both made speeches about Lucy, Maya, and Rena, and it was very similar to remember them. Wow. And then we wrote the glass, and then everything was happy from then on. And it literally, from that point on, it was just simcha, the Sheva brachas, singing, and that was that.
So that gesture, that recognition was a key part of it.
Absolutely, to acknowledge the pain, right. But also to break the glass and to move on, to move on to the next, the new life. I talk about this also in the book and elsewhere that, after the tragedy, after the shloshim, the 30 days of mourning, I turned to my kids and I said, we're starting a new life. It's going to be a good life, a happy life. It's going to have memories of life, number one. We've had 30 days of mourning, of tears, of pain. But we're starting again from scratch, and this is what it's going to be.
And I don't want to ask directly because it's not appropriate. At least I don't think so. But let me just say, we hope your daughters are doing well. We hope that they are, in fact, thriving in this, as you would say, either next life or next stage of life.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. I mean, they're all of the stage. They're moving on. In Israel. They've done, Karen's done a national service, and Tali's now in the Air Force, and Yehuda's in yeshiva, and very busy preparing for his army placement in a year's time, and so forth. So, they're kept very busy in Israel, the youth, which is very, very healthy, and they have so much meaning as youth in Israel. It's incredible, and that pulls them through. They got a lot of friends around them, Baruch Hashem, and that also helps.
You dedicated the book to Lucy, of course, your first wife of blessed memory, and to Charlie Kirk. And you and I have had a couple of conversations, and I don't know if you agreed with him on quote-unquote everything. Why the dedication?
You know what? I was just publishing it a few weeks ago, and he was assassinated. And I have to say, one of my vices is that I do watch a little bit of TikTok, although my son has worked out how to limit me to 15 minutes a day. So it runs out, and that's it. But one of the people who used to feature very regularly was Charlie Kirk, and he would go to university campuses and he would speak, to students who were anti-Israel, particularly, and anti-religion, and he would stand there and he would give them very good arguments against, abortion and against the Palestinian dialogue on Israel and so forth. And I found him a very, very inspiring, very important person. I mean, he's speaking to the youth of America, the Christian youth of America. I mean, these are greatest friends. They are, I have to say, without hopefully insulting too many of your listeners, that the evangelical Christians who support Israel are more important to us than the Jews who support Israel in America today, because they are, a far larger number. Bibi, when he got off the plane to meet Trump, met with a group of evangelical leaders before he met with a bunch of rabbis, right. And quite rightly so. So, these people are very important to us. I think they are our friends. We're running out of friends in the world today. Jews are very right-wing parties in Europe and in Britain. I noticed that, 5 years ago, were clearly anti-Semitic and Nazi, elements. And now the Jews in these countries because they perceive them to be the only hope. These people necessarily are friends, but I do believe evangelical Christians really are our ambassadors in the world for Israel, because people listen to the Israeli message, not listen to the, but we have Christian friends who are understand the reality on the ground and are transmitting tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people in a way that we are in a world. So I have a lot of respect, and also felt for Erica, his widow, as I feel that a lot of these things could be, these tools could be helpful to her and her kids in healing. And Baruch Hashem, I managed to get a copy of the book over to her, so I'm waiting to hear what she thinks.
Wow, very nice, very nice. Rabbi Leo Dee, we are always inspired when you are on the air with us. The brand new book is entitled The Seven Facets of Healing. It's available on Amazon. Wishing you continued hatzlacha, continued success, both in your personal life and in this amazing mission to help those who are suffering in Israel, to help those who need this message around the world. As you said, you're now in the middle of a tour speaking to high schoolers about important topics. All we could say, Rabbi Dee, is chazak v'amat, continued success and hatzlacha.
Thank you, Nachum. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Really appreciate that. The book is entitled The Seven Facets of Healing. It's on Amazon. It's written by Leo Dee, a practical guide to recovery. Check it out. We highly recommend it. More coming up. You're listening to a Wednesday morning broadcast at JM in the AM.